ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back once again to another edition of The Inside Track. Now, back in September, we did this for the first time, and we got some pretty rave reviews. People really enjoyed the show that we put on. So, racing season is just around the corner, and we are going to do this again. And we brought back a couple familiar guests and a couple new ones to talk about what's going on at Red River Co-op Speedway. So, without any further ado, we are going to introduce our panel of talkative people tonight, or at least so we hope. We'll start off with the guy to my immediate left, the Grand Poobah, I guess, of the Red River Co-op Speedway, the guy that's in charge, the guy that has all the arrows and daggers thrown at him when things go right or wrong. Blair Bodley. Blair, thanks for joining us here again.
Thanks, Ken.
All right, and to your left, we have a wonderful lady, first lady of the show. Tabitha Wasyluk is with us, and you've got a new job this year at Red River Co-op Speedway, don't you?
That's right, I'm going to be a roving reporter.
A roving reporter. So what does that entail?
I guess I'll be visiting pits and walking around the stands and just keeping the fans informed with what's going on around the track.
So the real question is, last year you were racing a car, this year not racing a car. I guess we're going to have to talk about that later on tonight?
Sure.
All right. And a guy that I know loves to talk, and he talks fast and quick, but he's always got a good point, and I enjoy his conversations. That's why I think I hang out here so many times. Paul Veert is with us here tonight. He's the driver of a late model, and of course the B mods. He's one of the guys that get the B mods started here at Red River Co-op Speedway. Paul, thanks for joining us here tonight.
Looking forward to it, thanks.
All right, and the guy that I can't wait to talk to tonight. He's got the $1 million smile, and he was definitely somebody that had a lot of fun in his inaugural season of racing at Red River Co-op Speedway last year. Rene Puluyko is at the far end. He's driving the Super Truck this year, and of course we got one roving guest that is moving around, so you may see her from time to him or her. Her. Paige is the new, I guess, mascot of Red River Co-op Speedway?
I guess so.
Yes. And if you knew anything about Blair, last year he had a wonderful dog that was going around, and unfortunately she's no longer here with us, but Paige, I think, is going to do a good job of taking over for her this year. All right, we've got lots of things to talk about, and of course there's lots of changes this year at Red River Co-op Speedway. For those of you that don't know, there are some big ones coming up. And the very first one, of course, that we need to talk about is what's going on with the Monday night program, or what happened is the better question to the Monday night program. Blair, maybe you can just give us a little detail what went on there.
Yeah, you know, it was something when we started the project off, Ken, that it was to try and keep as many people involved in racing as possible, and we were looking forward to that class sort of being a feeder program to our Thursday night program, but always keeping it in the back of our mind that there was always a chance that we might start to split or divide our crowd and dilute the driver pool a little bit. And after 3 years, we didn't see a significant increase in attendance. We saw our Thursday program suffer what I thought was significantly. So we made a decision this year to drop that the Monday program and focus 100% of our attention on the Thursday night program.
Paul, you drove last year in the B mods, and they ran every Monday night. You were there week after week. What's your thoughts and feelings about losing the B mods this year?
Well, we didn't lose the B mods.
Oh, sorry, pardon me, losing the Monday night program, sorry.
Monday was a nice relaxed night, but Leicester kind of come off the rose there a little bit. We got down to 10 or 12 B mods, which the year before we had 15 to 20. You guys tried introducing the mini sprints or the lightning sprints to that program, and there was nights when only 4 or 5 came out. So that Monday night program really got watered down, and you can see the end of it was very evident halfway through the season.
Was it a case that it was a great idea, a great thought, you think, but it just didn't have, there's not enough fan base maybe in Manitoba to come support a second night of racing?
I think for all intents and purposes it was a great idea, but I mean, people are busy these days, and to try and get number one, fans out on a Monday night, and number two, racers, because everybody travels, and Monday night's a really tough night, especially after coming off the weekend. Like I said, you know, it was an idea we had, thought it would work, gave it 3 years, and it just didn't pan out.
So we're moving everything now to Thursday night, which was the tried, tested, and true night that we've done at Red River Co-op Speedway for pretty much 40 years. What do you think this is going to do for the Thursday night program, for the drivers first of all, and maybe for fans in attendance?
Well, I think one of the biggest things is that number one, I think that one of the things you have to keep in mind too is that we dropped a class. So rather than running 9 classes, we're running 8. We added a class of Thursday night. Last year we ran 4. We're going to run 5, which will put more cars, put more spectators into the pit area, and get that atmosphere back that we're really missing.
You guys, do you feel the same way? Do you think it's going to make a big difference?
you got X amount of drivers and you have 9 classes. I still think there's 1 or 2 classes too many. You probably got 100 diehard drivers, and they only race so many times a year and dedicate to one class. But by having 8 or 9 classes, there's too many classes, and each class has 10 to 12 cars. We've got to eventually get down to 6 concrete classes and get the car count back up to 15, 20 per class, and have 3 heats of racing in each class.
Rene, your thoughts?
That, I think Paul's got the nail on the head. I don't think the hardest part of that is the decision what's that other class to go. And me being in a truck, it's kind of ironic because that's the one track, the one class, it not being WISSOTA based, that often gets asked the question first. And what came from that is why I even started racing trucks, was because I love the rules package. It embodied what I wanted in a race program, and that was inexpensive but reliable. I didn't have to have a stockpile of power glides or spend a pile of money on power glides to get one done right, and then have 4 people help me through the season to learn how, so that I didn't stuff the drive shaft through the back of it and keep breaking them. But yet trucks are still struggling. I mean, things look great. We were up around 16, 17 trucks in January, February, and I think we're down. We've had some setbacks, and it's too bad because it is a great class. I mean, you look at the top 5 guys that are running. We can run side by side and not turn each other around and get pointed the wrong direction, and we all have fun racing at the end of the day. Glenda had a great picture of, there was 4 or 5 of us standing there together after the race, telling lies about how good we were, but that's just what race car drivers do, right?
Tabitha, we haven't talked to you yet, but obviously you're on the bad end of the stick because you raced a Superstock last year. This year, you're not racing because there is no Superstocks at Red River Coop Speedway. Obviously, you can go elsewhere and try to find some place to race, but being your hometown and the place you want to race at, how do you feel about losing your class?
Well, it sucks. It really sucks. It's too bad. I agree that 9 classes was too many. I think 8 classes is still too many. I think the novelty on some of the higher classes has kind of worn off with having so many classes, and the nights being so long. The fans don't know what to expect to come to the races anymore. They don't know if it's going to end at 10. They don't know if it's going to end at midnight. I think that, obviously, I think that the Superstock should have stayed, but that's a little bit of a biased opinion, I know. I don't think that getting rid of the Superstocks is really going to help the situation at all, because I think 8 classes is still too many.
So we got to keep winding it down. Blair, is that what the goal is going to be?
We knew when we had to make this decision that no matter what we did, we had to start paring down the number of classes that we had. And the turnout in the Superstock class, through no fault of their own, but I mean, just we had good cars that were just parked at home, that for whatever reason guys didn't sell them, wouldn't come out to race, but we only had 7 or 8 cars, and you can't run a race program with 7 or 8 vehicles on it with the promise of trying to do something for next year. And I'll be perfectly honest with you, is that when we thought about what was going on, a lot of what came into play is if we got rid of the class, how many races would we actually keep involved in the sport, and how many would move to other classes? And I think so far, I know Tabitha is right now sitting on the sidelines, which is unfortunate. But a lot of other guys are going to hopefully jump into other classes, which is going to strengthen those classes as well. And I agree with everybody else here, is that I think that 8 classes, I think we've proved that 8 classes is too much right now. But this is nothing that we're going to fix short term. We'll just let the cards fall where they may. There's nobody, just in case anybody was thinking from Rene's comments that we have the truck class in our sights. That's not true, because right now could be different. Somebody asked me how many cars are going to get in any class, and I can't tell you till we have opening day and they come through the back gate. That's what'll determine how many vehicles we have. But we just take a look at everything and we reevaluate everything year to year and make our opinions or judgments based on that.
Now, Monday nights is gone completely. Are we going to use it as a rain date? What happens if night gets?
No.
So races
No.
are done this year if
We
don't
we
race?
are racing. We're racing on Thursday night. Tab alluded to the fact about sometimes our programs are inconsistent. That's one of the big changes that we made this year. We're advancing our start time from 7:30 to 7 o'clock. We've added a class to Thursday. We should be done anywhere between 9:30 and 10 o'clock. Darren Pellin, who's our announcer, is being hired as our program director. Darren's going to help us coordinate this program. And if Darren's involved, we will be done between 9:30 and 10 o'clock. That's barring any major, major accidents. And the whole goal is just to try and get as many fans as we can into the pit area after the race. And if we're anything past 10 o'clock, everybody's going home. But if we can finish between 9:30, quarter to 10, that allows the parents time to take their kids down to the pit areas and get a chance to visit with some of the drivers, which is hugely important.
As a driver, a 7 o'clock start time, does that work for you guys?
That's no problem. That doesn't really change anything at all. What I'm more interested in seeing the races end between 9:30 and 10. For us to come half an hour earlier, I think that's a good thing. But ending at 10:30, 11 just doesn't work for families.
It's so true, because, I mean, you have a family of 4 kids that still go to school in June, right? So there's always that, we got to get going. And I remember watching many nights at around 9:30, the crowd starts thinning out. After each feature, a couple more, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 people
Usually
leave,
about
right?
at 10 o'clock,
Yeah.
you can see the headlights
Yeah.
heading towards the highway.
And it's funny because everybody says the late models, the feature class, but really and truly, they probably have the least amount of fans by the end of the night because people don't want to wait around till 10:30, 11, right?
If we've had a program that was frustrating to watch, for sure.
Yeah.
Our fan base is not that committed. You wouldn't see that at other tracks that I've been at. Growing up, I've been around racing for almost all of my 40 years, and our fan base is not like they have in the central and the Midwest. It is not. We are family oriented. We are lake oriented. We are not all about the racetrack.
You think there will
those
be
of us that are
Yeah.
on the track? We're
Right.
hanging on to steering wheels. We're pulling on wrenches.
Do you think there are some drivers that will be upset with the 7 o'clock start? Because I know it's tough to get there. You're working. A lot of these guys are working class people.
But the thing you got to remember, Ken, is that nothing else changes. Cars are supposed to be ready for hot laps at 7 o'clock. So the drivers are all there ready to go. All we did is that we eliminated some of the things we're doing on the track prep side to allow us to start racing earlier. The drivers are already there. The gates are open at the same time. Like, nothing really changes a lot, which is why we chose to advance our start time.
Draw cutoff last year was 6:30.
No, 6:15.
6:15, so you're upping by 15 minutes.
Yeah.
That shouldn't change anything.
When we look at the Red River Cup Speedway for the calendar year, there's going to be a lot of big changes. So we have lost a class. Another class is going to be reduced in racing in terms of the lightning sprints. They're only going to be racing a handful of times during the course of the season. Is that going to be a lot of changes, you think, for the fans?
No, I think part of the problem that we might have, Ken, is that, as you know, we rotate the classes through. And part of the problem, I think, is that when a fan comes to the racetrack, unless they're really, really in tune with what's going on, they may not really know what classes are sitting out that night. A fan may just decide that one night they want to show up and watch the late models, and that could be the night the late models are off. That, for me, that's a bit of a problem. So we do everything that we can do to try and notify everybody. Our website's up to date, all the calendars say what classes are actually running on a given night. So it's a bit of a concern for us.
Now I'm going to ask a general question to everybody here, but when we look at numbers at other tracks, and I'm going to use Grand Forks because they just ran this past week, and I know there were some issues with the track, and we'll talk about track prep a little later on in the show. But Grand Forks had some pretty solid numbers all the way through in all their classes. Now they're only running 4 to 5 classes generally through the entire year. We're running 8. But in their Midwest Modifieds, they had 23 cars. Paul, you didn't run?
Typically, they run 30 cars, though. So it was down 7, 8 cars from a typical night.
And we're getting here in a modified night, 12 to 15?
B-mods, right?
B-mods, yeah.
Yeah. I think this year with changing to Thursdays, you're going to get guys that are going to step up and want to be part of the big program, so to say. And I think you're going to see 18 to 20 on a regular basis here.
See, they're running 18 street stocks. They had about 15, I do believe, late models. So their numbers are higher than Red River Cup Speedway in just about all the major classes. Do you think the change to Thursday nights for, at least for the Midwest Modifieds, is going to help them out? And do we feel that, what do we have to do to get more drivers from the U.S. to come up here to Canada in order to race?
I don't think I don't think we should be concerned about with how many drivers are going to pull up here. We need to take care of what's happening in our own backyard. And I think reducing the number of classes and getting to a really strong core group of classes, because right now if you want to race, you've got 8 different classes in front of you. So you get to pick one of 8. If we only had 5 or 6, if somebody wants to race, they're going to pick one of those classes to race. And I think therein lies our problem.
Right.
You're going to get the same guys that will come to, and correct me if I'm wrong,
Yeah.
but you're going to get the same guys that travel all the time, and it's not a huge majority. I think to increase our driver numbers, what we have to do is that we have to pull from our own backyard to grow our car counts.
I think to support what Blair's saying there, when you do that, that in itself will pull more people up. But we have to work on the track and driver base getting strong, consistent, and have them feel like they're looking out for one another. And when I say that, I mean the track's looking out for us and giving us a track that's ready to race at race time. We're not going out into a slimy shithole, pardon my French, and trying to run through the slop in the mud in our first heat. It's not mud racing, it's dirt racing. Everybody expects to get dirty. Nobody should have to pull 400 pounds off their car at the end of a heat race. From there, the talk will pull people up. When there's good car counts, there's fast guys, there's good racing. You don't have to worry about guys driving over top of you in a heat race for $22. Those guys from down south will want to come up. They will start.
Well, I don't think we should necessarily cater to the guys in the States. I think each class has 5 or 6 good cars parked that aren't coming here for various reasons.
No, and that's what I'm saying.
That's what we got to draw. It's simple. Those
By
guys,
fixing us,
right, I
it will
agree,
draw them.
It's correct, yeah.
And that's the key.
Absolutely.
I mean, when you look at Red River Cup Speedway, and you even look at what Grand Forks, 110 cars they probably have there racing on a given night.
4 classes though.
4 classes. We're racing 8 classes, and we have roughly 100 probably drivers in those 8 classes.
Yeah.
We're just too thinned out.
Yeah.
So I guess the decision has to come in the next couple of years. How do we keep winding it down to 5 or 6 classes that are competitive, good classes that will continue? And of course, I guess the big issue with that is cost. You want to make it affordable for people to jump in, and then of course you want to be able to give them the option to race a large car like a late model like we see behind us here. Right?
Have that wow factor.
The wow factor, exactly. So how do we get the sport to grow here in Manitoba? Because I guess that's a really big issue here. It's like hockey will always continue on. You're going to get curling. You're going to get those sports in Manitoba that will always find a way to continue and grow. Racing seems to be like a family sport. One parent passes it over to the child, that child passes it over to their child, and we continue racing over 40 years. We don't see a lot of newcomers. You both are pretty much new to the sport, right, Tabitha and Rene? No? You have a background in racing?
I've been around the sport, like I said in my earlier comments, pretty much all of my 40 years.
I started
Right, but racing,
before
you
that.
just started racing though this past year.
So,
Correct,
yeah, it's holding onto
yeah.
a steering wheel.
Yeah.
But there's a lot more to racing. than
Of course,
that.
yeah.
I've been
Of course.
pitting for the last 10, and when I was a teenager, also just pitting on late models, and I mean, Paul,
There's still
Tabitha, you don't get to the racetrack without guys that
Helping
are there to
out.
help and support.
Of course, yeah.
There's still a large sector of Winnipeg that doesn't even know there's a speedway there. It exists. I think each of the classes has to do their own to get friends and family out to come out there and see it. Use Blair's words, you get them out there once, you got a fan for the season. But there's still lots of people who don't even understand there's a racetrack to race dirt cars here in Winnipeg. You say racing, they say Assiniboine Downs on
Yeah.
Or you think Gimli, which is
Yeah,
one of the comments I get a lot of time.
Yeah, I
Oh,
get
you mean
more-
drag
I
racing
get
and
more of the
Gimli?
Assiniboine Down deal myself
Yeah.
as far as
Yeah,
dirt.
but
know, and-
Ken's right. It's one or the other.
Right.
The dirt track racing program, unfortunately, it's on the really or not on the radar.
So how do we increase the sport? Like, what do we have to do to get more people into it? Because, I mean, we had the rental race car program. They're not back this year. So what do we do to get new people into the sport?
I think what you have to do, you have to keep it affordable and you have to keep it fun. And as Rene alluded to, from the racer perspective, the track preparation on our side has to be more consistent than what it has been in the past. But it's really difficult times, I think, for racing anywhere, simply with the fuel costs. Nothing's getting cheaper these days. it's a really
Choices,
tough thing to get into. You have to keep your, I know we've got 8 classes, but you have to, some of those classes that we've got are those beginner or entry level classes. And Tabitha was just alluding to the fact, I mean, she started in that 4-cylinder class. So, you know, we've got the 4 cylinders and pure stocks, and there's 2 classes there that are direct entry level classes that I think are key to the future of our sport. That's $1 million question,
But
Ken.
bringing
I
those
really
classes
don't know.
now to Thursday and the awareness there may bring more people into those classes.
I think it will.
When I started,
Positive.
they were on Thursdays.
Yeah.
They were on Thursdays, and at one time there was 30 cars, I think, in that 4-cylinder class. 30.
Very strong.
And
But
all
how many
30 of those
classes
cars.
do we have then, though, Blair?
Pardon me?
5,
classes
no
do we
late
have?
model.
We had 5 classes then because we didn't offer that
That spread.
that
Which again
smorgasbord
is
of.
that back to
And
that.
it's not that we set out to deliberately do this. I mean, this was something that we tried, thinking that, you know, the more you offered people, the more you could draw in. But I think it's become pretty evident that you know, we may have, and I'm not saying we have, but you know, it certainly looks like maybe we've spread ourselves a little too thin.
You mentioned the rental race car program not being here, Ken. Can I ask you, Blair, what happened at that last test day that
Well, I
ultimately
can't
made a
comment. The
decision?
only thing I can't tell you why Derek pulled the pin on the program. The only thing I can tell you is that as a Speedway, we're huge supporters of that program. Even within ourselves, there's even some internal conflict about that program, but I'll only speak for myself. I was a huge supporter of it. I thought it was invaluable to try bringing new racers into the program. Did it cause some problems? Sure it did. But I mean, that's no different than anybody else. I mean, I've never driven a late model before. If I want to, I can go buy a late model now and I can go run at Speedway. There's no, in car racing, there's no criteria about how many races you have to run. So what it does is it gives a guy an opportunity to go out and try something. It didn't please everybody, but I can certainly tell you that the fact that Derek and the rental car program aren't here this year was certainly nothing to do with us.
Well,
I love that. I
I'll
like
just
that
say
program.
this, he pitted beside us the last couple of years, and last year with 4 cars, you could just see clearly evident they ran out of steam. Like he just ran himself too thin and just wore himself out. And I think he just got worn to the program. You can't say nothing happened with the Speedway, what happened there at the end of the year. It was just a case of he just ran himself ragged with 4 cars. And it was
It's a lot of work. I mean,
it was unbelievable. His wife was running, and he was running. His daughters were running. It was out of control.
Yeah.
I think he just burnt himself out on the deal. 1 or 2 cars was doable. When he rolled up to 4, it just didn't work out.
It's a great idea, honestly, and I think it brought a fair amount of new people to the
Huge.
track. It brought
Spectators.
spectators,
Yeah.
it brought new drivers, it opened up the pure stock class and the street stock class to a couple new people. Is there anything like that we can continue to do, you think?
You could, and it's something that we've thought about on ourselves because there is no program there, but we've got a lot of changes happening this year, and it would be a mistake for us to tackle one more project. So is it on our radar screen? Absolutely. We like that program.
But what you've got going on this year, you got the 2-seater car, which allows the person to get in the car and be part of the picture. Not
Yeah.
necessarily driving it, but it gets his eyes opened up
Yeah.
to what is involved, which is a good step on their part.
Right.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about track conditions for the upcoming year. I know you took heat last year, the year before.
I have a phone call.
Wet, not wet enough.
No, you know what? It's just, and that's and I don't mind talking about it because I mean, it's sort of a common thing around
Yeah.
us that track is one load of water away from being great or absolute horse crap. Over the last, I'll be going to my 6th season here and sort of paid attention to it. I'm going to be more actively involved in track prep this year, and I think as the season got on, we've learned to identify exactly what that track needs, and
The breaking point.
Yeah, and the mistake that I think that we've made in the past is that we always take advice from what other people do at other racetracks, and we have been trying to duplicate that. It doesn't work at our racetrack. What we've got, the type of soil that we've got there, is completely different than anywhere else that we race at. If you go down to Grand Forks at the end of a night racing at Grand Forks, you can take your thumb and you can stick it in, you can actually push it into the race surface. Our track is like trying to stick your finger into your desktop here. And I think at the tail end of the season, we've come up with a really good combination. The trouble is that when you build a track the way that we know the drivers want it, it now then gets a little dusty. So now we have to take out, because we've got fans too, and as much as I want to please everybody that's racing a car, we've still got 3,000 people sitting in the stands that don't want a dust storm. So we have to try now. It's a matter of trying to find that happy medium.
The happy medium. Now, I'm going to give you a little kudos. This week you decided to cancel racing. And I know from every driver, nobody wants to get out there onto the dirt and collect 400 pounds of, as you said, I won't mention that again, but you get that much dirt on your car, you can do a lot of damage to your car. You guys made the decision this week that the track was not ready. Other places didn't. And Paul, you can maybe talk a little bit about this, about Morden. You were there on the Saturday.
We tested on Saturday. It was terrible. And what Blair didn't say is the guy who kind of was looking after the track here, Cam, is no longer there this year. So the decisions will rest more on Blair's shoulders as far as when to water and how much water. But talked to guys that went to Grand Forks on Friday night, and there was 12-inch rollers in the corner, and the 16 late model started the feature and 6 finished.
It was a rodeo. It was terrible to watch.
And the sprint cars made 3 laps, tried to start a couple times, and they canceled the sprint car feature. So I don't think that's someplace you want to start. And if you start the season off with a bad track, it's only going to get worse the next month. So what he's doing is probably the smart thing. What's even better is the fact that he announced it before the long weekend so guys can do something with their families, take the weekend off as opposed to getting ready and finding out Thursday morning that the show was canceled.
And that's a tough pill to swallow because everybody's looking at you saying, hey, Blair, come on, we want to race, we want to race. Could you have gotten the track ready enough, but taken a chance with...
Oh, could we have that track ready on Thursday and just thrown something together and have guys race on it? Absolutely we could, but we sat down, last week we sat down with, each one of our classes has a driver rep, and we sat down with the driver reps and we posed that question to them, because me personally, I'm not afraid to cancel something early. It's early in the season, and I'm not a believer that you need to race just so you can say that you raced. Guys have a lot of money invested in their cars, and to go out and tear them up, we know what track conditions are going to be like. Even if we had a decent surface to start the night, you know at the end of the night that thing's going to get holed out, and guys are going to tear equipment apart. So we would rather take the time, and I can't speak for any other racetracks, but I know ours, if I do that, we just set ourselves further behind. So I'd rather take the week off. Hopefully the weather's going to turn in our favor sooner or later, and then just take the time and just build it properly, because we'll be way further ahead doing it that way than by just trying to race just to say we raced.
Are you guys upset?
I would say that decision-making and that thought process, if that continues, that would help to repair the attitudes of some of the drivers that are on Facebook, that are selling us to other drivers and to other fans short. And I hate to put anything negative on my Facebook or anything like that. It was hard to cheer a lot of times over the past 3 or 4 seasons. But again, this was a good decision, like you said, early enough on that everybody could make a decision to do what was right for them, whether it was spend that weekend with the family like Paul mentioned, or try to run at another track.
And what the problem with the Facebook or any of those other social medias, it takes 1 or 2 drivers to crank everybody up. And then even last year when you had that 2-day championship, Zach Johnson came up. I talked to him and his dad before the races, and he's been the national champion, late model champion, a couple times the last 5 years, and he didn't even want to come up based on what he's seen on Facebook. And after looking at the track, he was more than pleased. He wants to come back in this year to race. So on that Facebook stuff, it could really kill participation in the track, which I think it has in the last couple of years.
Yeah, it has, and one of the problems, we sat down this year, we're pretty honest with ourselves, and we tried to, you said we made a lot of changes this year, and one of the changes and one of the key parts that we identified is the relationship between the Speedway and the drivers or the pit area. It's sort of in the past, I think it's sort of been an us against them, and it should never be like that, because it takes, this is certainly an example of where everybody has to work together, and the drivers have legitimate complaints about some of the things that have been going on, and we hope we've identified all those problems, and we're working closely, and that's why we've got these driver representatives. We meet once a month and hope to identify issues before they become a problem. If we meet once a month, it's easy to find something that's wrong and fix it, but if you don't do it to the end of the year, the horse is already out of the barn and it's already too late. So we hope that we're going down the right path and that people are going to see real progress as the season goes on.
Tabitha, I got to ask you a question. You've been at the Red River Coast Speedway for a long time. really and truly, are you happy when they make the announcement that we're not racing tonight? If you would have been racing this week and your car class would have been in there, would you have been upset when you found out, hey, we're not racing? Because, I mean, it's the beginning of the year, everybody wants to get in.
I would prefer to know early if it's going to be canceled or not. If it's a case of the track's too wet now that we're not, it's not dependent on whether it's going to rain on Wednesday or Thursday. It's dependent on now. It's already too wet. I think they should call it as soon as they can. I'd prefer, like Paul said, to spend my weekend going to another track or going to the lake or whatever. I think that when there's a 90% chance of 10 millimeters of rain at midnight on Wednesday, they should call it for Thursday so that, especially with the earlier start, not that it'll really affect people too much, but some people still leave work early to get to the races, and if they don't make the call till 4:30 on Thursday, people have wasted that holiday time or whatever at work. I think there should be a deadline that it's going to be, if there's a risk of rain, it's going to be called at a certain time on Wednesday, Tuesday, and then people can rely on that and people can make their plans, and maybe they'll go down to the States or whatever on Friday. I think that calling the races earlier, I think that's a good thing.
Blair, just to add to that, we did talk a little bit before we started here about what the plans are going to be for rain dates this year. What is Red River Co-op Speedway going to do differently this year when it comes to canceling for rainouts that you did in the past years?
We're not having a rain date. If we don't race on Thursday, it's just canceled.
But in terms of letting people know, is there going to be anything differently done? Like, are you going to make that decision early in the day? Like, there's a forecast for rain.
I mean, now you're putting me in the role of a weather forecaster.
Well, you do everything else.
It's a tough one. I mean, and I think even last year there was times when we called a race early in the day based on a marginal weather forecast. I think we did that 4 times. One time we got it completely wrong. When it came race time, I mean, the sun was out and probably could have done it. And that's a situation you don't want to get into because people don't understand that. I'm definitely a proponent of letting guys know ahead of time because we do have travelers. We do have guys coming from, from 2 hours, 3 hours away. So to give them as much lead time as possible I think is beneficial to us. Are we afraid to call it early? No. But there does come a point in time where you just sort of, you wait and you wait and you wait.
Well, and it is so hard with the weather considering Winkler could have 3 inches of rain and we don't get a drop. And yet the weather's coming in from the southwest, but yet it still doesn't land here at Winnipeg.
Long and the short about the races, we want to race.
Yeah.
So if there's any chance of being able to race, you want to race. But if there's a 90% chance of a ½ inch of rain on Thursday morning,
yeah.
I guess the smart call there is to wipe it out.
Yeah.
But if you stood back and looked at the forecast and there's always be a chance of rain, you could cancel every day Tuesday morning, we wouldn't race all year long.
And the good thing,
that's the long and short of it.
Yeah, and the good thing is now,
it's not going to work.
The good thing is now though is that the weather forecasts are becoming much more, I won't say accurate.
Where?
On the but the radar, and that's what I tend to go a lot to, is taking a look at the radar screens, and after you look at them for a while, you sort of get a tendency to see which way where they're trending, and we base a lot of our decisions based on the not on the actual forecast that we're being told, but we'll go on the weather maps and just watch the systems coming through, and we're getting a pretty good idea as to.
You're right.
He's
a weatherman. He's a weatherman.
He's a weatherman now too, right?
That's
part of his role. Yeah.
Well, we're gonna talk a little bit.
This is my weatherman hat.
Yeah. We're going to talk about your other job role, chef, in just a few moments. We're going to take a break. We're just going to dip down here to black. We're going to be back up in a second. We're going to give the guys a chance to refresh, get a drink, and collect their thoughts as we talk a little bit about the food situation at Red River Co-op Speedway.
Oh,
be prepared, Blair Bodley, Paul Veert. Can't wait to talk about this. We've got more coming up right after this, ladies and gentlemen, so stick around.
I'm going to give him a shot.